I caught my stepson in the bath washing himself. I helped him. Hello everyone. Life frequently catches you off guard. That's precisely what happened to me on an otherwise typical Wednesday evening. I had just come back from work, my heels clicking against the wooden floor as I stepped into the house. The day had stretched on endlessly, leaving me drained, and all I yearned for was to sink into a soothing hot bath, allowing the tension to dissolve into the water. Little did I know that evening would etch an indelible mark on my life, shifting the course of everything within our home. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, so I can continue sharing captivating and authentic stories like these. Be sure to watch this video all the way to the end, and don't forget to give it a thumbs up, as this story promises to be quite captivating. Kindly click the like button to show your support. The house was quiet when I got there, which was typical. Earlier in the day my husband, Thomas, mentioned that he would be attending a late meeting. He had been putting in long hours recently, striving to meet a significant project deadline. This left only Logan, Thomas's son from his previous marriage, at home. Logan, 20, was a reserved yet captivating young man who seldom caused any trouble. He held a part-time position at the local hardware shop and dedicated most of his free time to his room. While we weren't especially close, our friendship was enjoyable and grounded in mutual respect. I had always perceived him as a person who valued his own space and solitude, reminiscent of his father. I had grown used to the serenity of the house when it was just the two of us. As I set my suitcase on the kitchen counter and poured myself a drink of water, I noticed Logan's pickup parked in the driveway. Strange, I mused. He often took on the late shift. I casually called out his name, and my voice reverberated through the vacant house. No response. I didn't give it much thought, as I figured he was in his room, maybe listening to music or catching some sleep. After sipping my water, I chose to head upstairs and slip into something more comfortable. After such a long day, all I craved was a moment of peace. As I walked past the bathroom, I caught the subtle sound of water flowing and noticed the door ajar just a bit. This caught my attention as peculiar. Logan had a strong emphasis on maintaining privacy. He consistently secured the doors with great care, particularly the bathroom door. My curiosity was ignited. I hesitated for a moment before gently easing the door open a little wider. The sight before me stopped me in my tracks. Logan stood by the sink. His back was turned to me, and his shoulders slumped in a way that suggested he was absorbed in something. His movements were awkward, nearly. In a whirlwind of chaos, I suddenly noticed he was without a shirt, his pants sagging carelessly at his hips. He appeared to be gripping a washcloth and cleaning something that was out of view. The sudden creak of the door startled him. He spun around, his eyes frantic with terror. "Oh my goodness! I didn't notice you coming in," he yelled, his voice quaking. I am frozen, equally amazed. I shifted my gaze between him and the washcloth, a wave of uneasiness washing over me. I was taken aback by the scene that unfolded before me as I entered, and a wave of sympathy washed over me. For encroaching, I deeply apologize, I whispered, averting my eyes. But before I could secure the door, my voice was interrupted. "Wait," he asked, his tone pleading. "It's not what you believe." I hesitated, my hand suspended above the doorknob. Part of me longed to escape down the corridor and act as if nothing had happened. Yet another, partially captivated. His voice lacked the defensiveness typical of someone caught in wrongdoing. Rather, it was brimming with shame and hopelessness. Against my better judgment, I found myself turning back to confront him, my eyes locked onto his features. "All right," I responded thoughtfully, trying to keep my tone even. "What's going on?" Logan cast his eyes downward. His cheeks flushed a deep scarlet. He seemed to be searching for the right words, his hands awkwardly handling the washcloth. At last he released a deep breath and remarked, "I simply didn't know whom else to turn to." "What are you exactly? What are you inquiring about?" I applied gentle pressure. My fascination deepened even in the face of the unfavorable situation. He shifted restlessly and averted his gaze. He acknowledged that it is personal. "I've been facing some challenges, and I'm uncertain about the next steps to take. Dad isn't around, and you're the only one I can confide in." His vulnerability caught me off guard. Logan had consistently upheld his autonomy, seldom revealing details about his personal life. The notion that he sought my help caused me to hesitate. I entered the bathroom. I gently closed the door behind me, creating a sense of intimacy for our conversation. "All right," I replied, maintaining my tone. Impartial. "Could you please share what's going on?" Logan paused, gathering his thoughts before attempting to articulate his explanation. Initially, his words came out unclear, as he fought to express the torment he was enduring. I listened carefully, trying to understand what he was conveying. It soon became clear that this was a sensitive topic, one he felt too awkward to bring up with Dad. As he spoke, I found myself enveloped in a profound sense of empathy. Requesting assistance is rarely an easy task, particularly when it involves something deeply personal. I could perceive the tension in his gaze, the struggle within him between the desire for assistance and the fear of judgment looming over him. "All right," I replied after a brief pause for thought. "First and foremost, it's wonderful that you're focusing on these details. This shows that you value your well-being." Logan looked up at me, his gaze brimming with gratitude and solace. "Seriously, do you really not find this odd?" "Not in the slightest," I assured him. "People often find themselves pondering various aspects of their bodies at different moments. It's perfectly fine." I devoted the following. For several minutes, I shared the best guidance I could offer, drawing from my own knowledge and experiences. I tried to maintain a realistic and straightforward approach to the topic, steering clear of anything that might increase his discomfort. I sensed that this conversation brought him significant relief, even if it started off clumsily. As the conversation progressed, the initial discomfort faded away. Logan seemed to ease up, and I noticed he was pleased to have someone to talk to. By the conclusion of our conversation, he seemed to be more comfortable. He even managed a small smile. "Thank you," he replied slowly, his voice barely a whisper. "I never imagined I could share this with anyone." I mirrored his grin, feeling a wave of relief as the tension dissipated. "Thank you, Logan. Always keep in mind that reaching out for help is never out of place. Nobody has all the answers." Upon leaving the restroom, a strange blend of emotions washed over me. On the one hand, it was fulfilling to be present for Logan during his time of need, offering a listening ear. Conversely, the incident was so unforeseen and atypical that I was completely at a loss for how to manage it. There was an undeniable significance to the event, as though it marked a pivotal shift in our relationship. I simply didn't know what it signified, or how it would unfold in the coming days. I attempted to brush off the strange feeling as I went through my evening, yet it lingered in my thoughts like a shadow. The residence exuded tranquility, accompanied solely by the soft murmur of the air conditioner. Thomas returned home late that night, weary but satisfied. He remained completely unaware of the peculiar conversation that had taken place while he was away. As I reclined in bed that night, gazing at the ceiling, my mind couldn't escape the reflections on the events of the evening. Something had shifted, yet I couldn't exactly identify what it was. All I understood was that existence in our household would never return to what it once was. The days following that unforeseen meeting were certainly peculiar, to put it mildly. Nothing particularly noteworthy happened. Everything on the surface appeared to be perfectly normal. Thomas persisted with his task as he always did. Logan adhered to his part-time shift and study schedule, while I managed to juggle my home and work responsibilities. Yet, beneath the surface, there existed an unspoken but palpable tension between Logan and me, a transformation in the dynamics that had taken place, leaving me uncertain about how to navigate it. Logan always slipped away from me, hiding most of his life in shadows. Our exchanges, though cordial, had remained at a superficial level of pleasantries. But suddenly, after our conversation about the toilet, I felt a new depth of comprehension between us, one that was both uncomfortable and oddly comforting. I found myself reflecting on him more than I should have, not out of maternal instinct or concern, but with a sense of wonder at how I had overlooked this aspect of him previously. Understanding that Logan was not merely the reserved young man who preferred solitude, I discovered a profound depth within him, an emotional landscape that I had only just started to grasp. Logan's behavior shifted more distinctly on Friday evening. Thomas had departed to meet with a client, while I was preparing dinner. Logan had not yet come back from his shift at the hardware shop. I was chopping vegetables when I heard his truck pull into the driveway. I suspended my knife in midair, contemplating how I ought to make my entrance. The unease that had taken root between us over the past few days had created a wall that I felt uncertain about how to dismantle. As the front door swung open, I exclaimed, "Hey, Logan!" Attempting to appear unconcerned that he didn't reply right away, but I could hear his footsteps as he made his way into the kitchen. He appeared drained yet offered a faint smile. "Hey," he responded softly. "What's on the menu for dinner?" I smiled. He felt a sense of relief, glad that the distance that had characterized recent days was no longer present. "Merely a plate of spaghetti. Do you feel a pang of hunger?" "Indeed, I am quite hungry," he replied, moving over to the counter to fetch a drink of water. That we dined in silence initially, the only noise being the soft clink of forks against plates. Yet I noticed Logan seemed more at ease than he had in days. His smile seemed more authentic, and his posture was more relaxed. He set his fork aside and looked at me, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "That I've been reflecting on your words from earlier." I took a moment to gather my thoughts before moving on, "and I truly appreciate your willingness to listen once more." I lifted my eyes from my plate and caught his gaze. The sincerity in his words was sufficient to calm my heart. I had been anticipating this moment, pondering how to respond, yet feeling a sense of relief that he felt secure enough to share. "Certainly, Logan," I replied, my tone gentle. "That I'm thrilled I could help." There was another long wait, but this time I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't experienced before. It felt as though we were genuinely engaging in conversation, rather than just exchanging superficial pleasantries. "You have consistently." "He has been polite to me," he said, his voice softer now. "And I don't want you to think I don't appreciate it." I nodded, feeling unsure of how to express the significance of his words to me. "That I realize it can be challenging at times," I added after a brief pause, "but I'm glad you understand that you can reach out to me whenever you need to." That he smiled once more, this time with a touch more ease. "I'll make an effort to keep that in mind," he replied, reaching for another slice of spaghetti. As supper went on, our conversations grew increasingly relaxed. We talked about his education, his job on the side, and the latest Netflix series we were both enjoying. It was a small advancement, yet an advancement all the same. Logan was starting to reveal himself. Even though our first conversation was filled with a certain awkwardness, in subtle ways. Later that evening, after we finished our meal, I settled onto the couch to unwind with a book. Logan withdrew to his room, his steps soft against the floor. That I found myself pondering if he was still processing our conversation. The next few days unfolded in a similar manner. Thomas came home later each night, as his job demanded increasingly more of his time. Logan, though somewhat more approachable than in the past, still maintained a certain level of solitude in various aspects. Our conversation during dinner was short yet significant, and he seemed more comfortable in my presence. However, an unspoken tension lingered between us, something neither of us was ready to address. Logan performed an utterly surprising act on one of those tranquil evenings, maybe a week following our conversation in the restroom. As the evening drew near, I found myself cozily nestled on the couch, engrossed in the latest episode of a captivating drama. Logan suddenly appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "May I have a moment of your time to converse?" he asked, his voice scarcely rising above a murmur. That I jolted upright, pondering what lay ahead. "Absolutely. Step inside." He paused for a moment before completely stepping into the room. He seemed anxious, his posture rigid, as though he was uncertain about what words would come next. "What thoughts are occupying your mind?" I asked gently, wishing to create a safe space for him. Logan shifted uneasily from foot to foot, momentarily avoiding my gaze before responding. "I've been reflecting on what I shared with you, and I feel it's important to talk to Dad about it. I can't quite pinpoint it, but I feel he should grasp the challenges I'm facing." I was amazed by his remarks. That he found himself more exposed now than he ever had before. This marked a progression. He acknowledged his feelings and recognized that he required support from Thomas, in addition to myself. That I offered a gentle smile, wishing to bring him some solace. "Logan, that's a significant move. And I trust Thomas will appreciate your arrival. It may be challenging, Yet it is essential that he nodded, his eyes locking onto mine. A flicker of gratitude shone in his eyes, and it was clear that choosing to speak with Thomas weighed heavily on him. Yet he had made significant progress. He murmured softly, "I don't want to. Let's create some unusual dynamics between us. I have come to understand that there have been changes lately." I shook my head, overwhelmed by a wave of fondness for him. "It's perfectly normal," I said to him. "Logan, we are connected by blood. No matter the situation, we consistently support each other." He gave me a small smile and nodded before turning to leave. "Thank you for everything," he remarked, glancing back over his shoulder. As he left the room, I released a breath I hadn't known I was holding. I experienced a profound sense of pride for him. He was discovering how to express himself, ask for assistance, and handle his feelings in a constructive way. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was witnessing a significant moment in his growth. The next day, Thomas returned home from work sooner than usual. I noticed the weariness etched on his face. Yet, his steps were gentle as he entered the door. "Hey," he whispered, letting a briefcase rest by the door. "How are things progressing?" "Excellent," I remarked, beaming. Nonetheless, I sensed that Logan has something on his mind. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "He has been more forthcoming lately," I mentioned, "and he expressed a desire to discuss something significant with you." Thomas's expression softened, revealing a blend of anxiety and eagerness. He expressed his intention to speak with him, his voice steady and assured. "I appreciate you sharing that with me." That evening following supper, Thomas and Logan found themselves seated together in the living room. I couldn't catch much of their conversation, but I observed Logan leaning in, engaging fervently with his father. Thomas listened intently, his face a blend of concern and affection. I noticed that Logan's journey into maturity represented a pivotal moment in their relationship, and Thomas was ready to embrace it alongside him. As the weeks went by, life returned to its usual rhythm. The unspoken tension between Logan and me gradually faded away with time. He no longer shied away from my presence, and I could tell he was still processing his words, yet he seemed more at ease and truer to himself. Thomas and Logan shared more moments together, deepening their bond, and it was evident that Thomas was making a conscious effort to be more engaged in his child's life. One weekend, Thomas suggested we embark on a day trip to the lake. He was trying to strengthen our friendship, and I thought it was a brilliant idea. The weather was perfect, featuring stunning blue skies and a gentle breeze. We prepared a lunch, traveled to the lake, and enjoyed a day of relaxation and enjoyment. We enjoyed hours of swimming, playing frisbee, and unwinding on the beach. Logan seemed genuinely delighted, grinning and joking with Thomas in a manner I had never witnessed before. Observing their interactions filled me with excitement, and I wished for this journey to be a pivotal moment for each of us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across the lake, we found ourselves on the beach, savoring the final moments of the day. Thomas had drifted off on a blanket, his snores harmonizing with the gentle rhythm of the waves. Logan and I sat a short distance apart, gazing at the horizon. "Thank you for coming today," he whispered after a prolonged silence. "It has been delightful, truly." Enjoying moments together. A smile spread across my face as a wave of tranquility washed over me. "I feel a sense of joy. We ought to engage in activities like this more often." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the vast expanse of the ocean. "Indeed, I think it is beneficial." We lingered in silence for a while, our unspoken connection suffusing the quiet around us. When Thomas awoke, we gathered our things and drove home, filled with joy and reminiscences from the day. That night, as I lay in bed next to Thomas, I pondered the journey we had taken together as a family. The past 2 weeks have been challenging, yet they also brought us closer in ways I hadn't anticipated. Logan's journey was far from over, yet I felt certain that he and we were heading in the right direction. Transcribed by TurboScribed at AI. Go unlimited to remove this message.